Hi there, and welcome back to LeanReads, the channel where we share powerful insights and personal growth lessons through great books. What if the world's greatest crisis isn't war, climate change, or economic collapse, but something quieter, closer, and far more human? What if the true emergency lies in the fears that live inside ordinary people? The fear of not affording tomorrow, of losing stability, of being unheard in a world too loud. In the next crisis, Danny Dorling asks us to listen, not to experts or politicians, but to the heartbeat of humanity itself. If you enjoy what you hear and want to dive deeper, we've included a link to the book in the description below. Now, let's get started. In the modern world, we seem to be living in a state of permanent alarm. Every day, the media floods us with headlines about economic crises, environmental disasters, political instability, and a multitude of invisible threats. A sense of unease hangs over society, leading many to believe that the world is teetering on the brink of collapse. But do these fears truly reflect what billions of people around the world are thinking about every day? Published in 2025, The Next Crisis by Danny Dorling paints a strikingly different picture through the lens of extensive global survey data. It reveals a surprising truth. There is a vast disconnect between what experts and the media label as a crisis and the real everyday concerns of ordinary people. Daily burdens such as the cost of living, job security, personal safety, and the quality of healthcare are the true undercurrents shaping people's emotions and worldview. This concise yet illuminating book takes readers on a journey through these genuine anxieties, helping us better understand the complex world we live in and guiding us toward building a more stable future based on empathy, evidence, and properly aligned priorities. Danny Dorling is a professor of geography at the University of Oxford and one of the world's leading scholars on social inequality and demographic change. His research, known for using maps and data visualization to highlight social trends, has profoundly influenced global discussions on wealth distribution and public policy. He is the author of several acclaimed works, including Inequality and the 1% and Peak Inequality, which have helped redefine how we understand inequality in modern society. Have you ever scrolled through the morning news and felt an invisible weight settle on your shoulders? Climate crises, wars in faraway places, looming global recessions, and warnings of the next pandemic waiting to strike. The list of threats seems endless. We are told the future is precarious, and anxiety has become a constant companion in our daily lives. You are not alone. Millions, perhaps billions, around the globe feel the same. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, in the quiet hours of life, what truly keeps you awake at night? Is it the complex charts showing atmospheric carbon levels, or your next electricity bill? Is it the tangled web of geopolitics on the other side of the planet, or your child's safety on the way to school? Is it the macroeconomic forecasts of economists, or the stability of your current job? This is the central question the next crisis invites us to explore. And surprisingly, when we listen to the voices of ordinary people across continents, a very different truth emerges. The things that worry most of humanity are not the grand global catastrophes discussed on television panels, but the quiet, persistent struggles of everyday life, the battle to make ends meet, the hope for steady work, the longing for safety and stability, the desire for reliable healthcare and decent education for one's children. This essay and Dorling's work takes us on a journey to peel back the layers of our collective fears. We will explore why the modern world has become so haunted by the very idea of crisis and examine what people truly worry about, from the rising cost of living and job insecurity to personal safety, health, and even skepticism toward environmental narratives. By understanding what genuinely troubles people, we can face our complex world with greater calm and perhaps discover which priorities truly matter for building a more balanced, empathetic, and just future. In recent decades, the word crisis has become inseparable from our everyday vocabulary. Open a newspaper, turn on a news channel, or scroll through social media. We are bombarded with phrases like economic crisis, climate crisis, housing crisis, and healthcare crisis. Everything seems to be in a constant state of emergency, teetering on the brink of collapse. Yet paradoxically, the actual frequency of catastrophic events has not increased at the same pace. So, why do we live with the constant feeling that the world is spiraling out of control? Part of the answer, ironically, lies in our progress. Throughout most of human history, life was a daily struggle for survival. Our ancestors' greatest concerns were finding food, avoiding predators, and enduring the winter. As living standards rose, lifespans lengthened, and everyday dangers receded, we gained the luxury of worry. Once we no longer feared for tonight's dinner, we began to worry about the melting of the polar ice caps. But that's not the whole story. Our age of anxiety is also fueled by something else: the modern media environment. Since the 1960s, the use of the word crisis in books and newspapers has exploded exponentially. To capture attention, dramatic language works better than calm analysis. A headline about a challenge will never draw as many clicks as one about a crisis. Fear sells, and urgency keeps us scrolling. Gradually, we have been drawn into a feedback loop of perpetual alarm, fed by an endless stream of disaster narratives. This amplification has created a widening gap between perception and reality, and between the fears of elites and the concerns of ordinary people. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, experts may identify the greatest global threats as cyber warfare, energy crises, or the breakdown of supply chains. These are valid concerns, but they reflect the worldview of those managing global systems. Meanwhile, a factory worker, a single mother in a city, or a farmer in a rural village faces a very different kind of crisis, one of rent, school fees, and job insecurity. Recognizing this disconnection is the first step toward understanding what the real crises of our world truly are. When asked what worries them most, people across nations, rich or poor, developed or developing, give the same answer: the cost of living. This is not an abstract fear of a distant future, but a tangible, daily weight pressing on their shoulders. It is present in every electricity bill, every grocery trip, every moment of hesitation before buying a small gift for their child. Inflation is the most visible monster in this crisis. When the prices of everything, from vegetables and meat to rent, climb relentlessly, while wages stagnate or rise only marginally, unease seeps into every household. The money earned through hard work suddenly buys less. Dreams once within reach, saving for a home, a university education for one's children, begin to fade. Life turns from something predictable into a daily struggle, not to fall behind. Global surveys confirm that this is not the worry of any single nation, but a shared concern, a gray cloud hanging over the collective mood of humanity. Alongside inflation, poverty, and inequality flow like hidden currents, eroding society's sense of safety. While macroeconomic charts sometimes display optimistic figures about poverty reduction, the reality is more complex. Much of the apparent improvement stems from demographic shifts, poorer families having fewer children, rather than a genuine redistribution of wealth or opportunity. For millions, life remains bleak. They witness immense fortunes accumulating in the hands of a small elite, while the middle and working classes feel increasingly squeezed. The fear of inequality is not born of envy, but of imbalance. When people sense that no matter how hard they work or how faithfully they follow the rules, the game is rigged in favor of the privileged, trust in society begins to erode. They see doors closing, not only for themselves, but for their children. The contrast between glittering skyscrapers and cramped housing blocks, lavish banquets, and meager dinners breeds a quiet tension at the heart of communities. It is this feeling of powerlessness, of living within a system no longer designed to serve the majority, that transforms the cost of living into the most pervasive and enduring anxiety of our time. After the struggle to make ends meet, another question looms large in the minds of workers around the world. Will there be enough good jobs for everyone in the future? This fear is not merely about unemployment statistics, it strikes deeper at dignity, safety, and one's sense of belonging in society. Losing a job means more than losing income. It can mean losing confidence, identity, and one's sense of purpose. In countries that have endured mass unemployment in the past, such as Britain in the 1980s, the memory of hardship and despair lingers in the collective psyche. Even when current jobless rates are low, the fear of another wave of layoffs remains alive beneath the surface. Moreover, the issue is not only the number of jobs, but their quality. Increasingly, work today is precarious, short term contracts, low pay, minimal benefits. Many people technically have jobs, but still live in a state of constant insecurity, unable to plan for the future or build a stable financial foundation. They remain vulnerable to economic shocks, always one crisis away from losing everything. Amid this insecurity, immigration often becomes the focal point of public anxiety. In wealthy countries, rising inequality creates a persistent demand for low wage labor in services, construction, and agriculture. This demand draws migrants from poorer nations seeking a better life. Yet, paradoxically, these newcomers frequently become scapegoats for the economic struggles of locals. When native workers feel their jobs threatened or their wages suppressed, they find it easy to believe political narratives claiming that immigrants are stealing their opportunities. Although economic evidence overwhelmingly shows that migrants often take jobs others will not and contribute positively to the economy, the fear persists. Politicians exploit it deliberately, redirecting public frustration away from deeper causes, such as flawed economic policy or failures in workforce retraining. This cycle of blame not only deepens social division, but also prevents us from addressing the root issue, the fragility of employment itself. And that fragility, Dorling reminds us, is one of the most fundamental threats to stability in any society. When war and violence dominate the headlines, our minds often leap to the devastating images of conflicts in faraway places, Ukraine, Gaza, or other regions torn apart by strife. These events undeniably stir global anxiety. Yet, when surveys dig deeper into what people actually fear, a different picture emerges. Most concerns about safety are far more personal and close to home. For ordinary citizens, the fear of being mugged on the way home, gang violence in their neighborhood, or a rise in petty crime feels far more immediate than a geopolitical conflict thousands of kilometers away. This fear reflects one of humanity's most fundamental desires, the need to feel safe in one's own environment. In places where crime is rising, from certain cities in Brazil and South Africa to urban areas in Europe, people live in a constant state of vigilance. They worry each time they step outside, avoid walking down empty streets, and grow suspicious of strangers. This pervasive sense of insecurity slowly erodes trust in neighbors, in communities, and in institutions of law enforcement, fracturing the social fabric and leaving behind a society bound more by fear than solidarity. What makes this even more troubling is how fear is so easily politicized. Leaders often amplify external threats, war, terrorism, foreign enemies, to divert attention from domestic failures. A government may invoke the specter of an outside aggressor so that citizens forget that hospitals are overcrowded, schools underfunded, or housing unaffordable. By manufacturing a shared enemy, they hope to unite the populace and mask the cracks in their own governance. When societies are misled this way, they enter a dangerous feedback loop. Real issues, those affecting daily life, go unaddressed, while resources and emotions are consumed by fear and division. Instead of investing in public services, improving community cohesion, or addressing the root causes of crime, poverty, inequality, lack of opportunity, nations drift toward debates about military budgets and national security. Ultimately, the fear of war and the desire for personal safety are not merely about weapons or borders. They raise deeper questions about fairness, about who is truly protected, and about how a society chooses to confront its own fragility. In our collective imagination, the home is not just a structure built from bricks and mortar. It is a sanctuary, a symbol of stability, belonging, and the space where families build their futures. Yet for millions of people around the world, especially in major cities, the dream of a safe home is slipping further away. The housing crisis has quietly become one of the most profound sources of anxiety and insecurity in the modern age. As housing prices and rents soar far beyond the pace of income growth, a vast portion of the population, particularly young people and low income workers, find themselves trapped. Many must spend a staggering share of their monthly earnings just to rent cramped apartments. This burden leaves little room for saving, investing in education, or handling emergencies such as illness. The dream of owning a home becomes an illusion. People are stuck in an endless rental cycle, unable to build wealth, constantly fearing rent hikes or eviction notices. The deeper causes of this crisis, however, are often obscured or deliberately misrepresented. Politicians frequently deflect blame toward immigrants, claiming that new arrivals are overwhelming housing markets. In reality, as seen in countries like the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, the housing crisis is the cumulative result of decades of policy failure. Governments neglected urban planning, underfunded public housing, and allowed real estate speculation to dominate, turning homes into investment assets rather than places to live. Supply was deliberately restricted while demand grew unchecked, pushing prices to unsustainable heights. The consequences reach far beyond economics. Housing insecurity affects mental health, family life, and even demographic stability. When young people cannot afford to buy or rent independently, they delay marriage, childbirth, and long term life plans, trends that reshape entire societies. Families forced to move frequently disrupt their children's education, weaken community ties, and erode social cohesion. The home, once a symbol of safety, becomes instead a source of chronic stress. The struggle for housing has thus become a silent crisis, one that reveals something deeper: the failure of modern societies to guarantee one of humanity's most basic needs: shelter. Beneath the rising rents and collapsing affordability lies a moral question about how wealth, space, and opportunity are distributed, and whether our cities still serve the people who live in them. Beyond economic hardship and personal security, people across the world share another, quieter concern: how society cares for them throughout their lives, from the day they are born to the day they die. These worries all revolve around one essential idea: the social safety net. Will our children receive an education that prepares them for a stable, dignified future? Will our healthcare system protect us when we fall ill without pushing our families into financial ruin? And after a lifetime of work, will we be able to retire in peace with dignity? The answers vary widely from one country to another, and they reveal what each society truly values. Consider the so-called happiness index. It is not a sentimental or abstract measure. Surveys show that nearly half the world's population has not felt genuinely happy for years, suggesting that social conditions directly shape our mental and emotional well-being. Northern European nations, such as Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, consistently top global happiness rankings, not because they are the richest, but because they possess robust, trustworthy welfare systems. Citizens there believe they will be cared for. They enjoy reliable public health care, free high quality education, and strong family and unemployment support. This collective sense of security alleviates anxiety, fostering harmony and social trust, the invisible glue that keeps communities stable. By contrast, in countries where the safety net is weak or fraying, anxiety tends to run much higher. In the United States, access to quality healthcare depends heavily on income and geography, creating stark inequalities in life expectancy. In the United Kingdom, the once revered National Health Service, a symbol of national pride, now struggles under the weight of underfunding and overcrowding, leaving many disillusioned and fearful. These are not just concerns about personal health. They point to deeper doubts about fairness and institutional competence. When citizens believe the tax system favors the rich who exploit loopholes, while the middle class bears the heaviest burden, when they see public schools decline while private education becomes unaffordable. When they watch their aging parents battle medical debt, their faith in the social contract begins to erode. Ultimately, all these worries, from childhood to old age, boil down to one existential question: does society genuinely care for all its citizens, or only for the privileged few? At international summits and across media headlines, climate change is often described as the greatest and most urgent crisis humanity has ever faced. Scientists continually present irrefutable evidence of global warming, while harrowing images of natural disasters fill our screens. Yet when we look at global surveys of public concern, climate change often ranks only fifth or lower on the list of people's top worries. Why such a gap between expert alarm and everyday perception? One major reason is growing skepticism, not necessarily of science, but of sincerity. People have heard endless promises from politicians at climate conferences, only to witness little concrete action afterward. They see major corporations continuing to pollute, while the costs of green policies, such as carbon taxes, fall squarely on ordinary consumers. This breeds the impression that the fight against climate change is a stage play for elites, a moral theater serving political and economic interests rather than the planet itself. More surprisingly, skepticism is rising even among the young. Increasingly, young men, once presumed to be the most eco-conscious demographic, are questioning whether a complete phase out of fossil fuels is economically feasible, or whether the sacrifices demanded of them will truly yield results. Even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has begun softening its apocalyptic tone, aware that alarmism can erode public trust rather than inspire action. Beyond doubt, another reason for public indifference is the gap between global warnings and personal experience. While extreme weather events, heat waves, floods, wildfires are increasing, their direct impact on daily life still feels distant or manageable, especially in wealthier nations. For someone struggling to pay rent, worried about job security, or supporting a family, the threat of rising sea levels in 50 years feels far less immediate than next month's spills. Economic instability, crime, and personal safety dominate their mental space, pushing climate anxiety down the list. To confront the climate crisis effectively, we must do more than issue louder warnings. We must understand these complex human reactions: the fatigue, the mistrust, the competing urgencies of daily life. Only by rebuilding trust and designing fair, realistic solutions, ones that do not place the heaviest burdens on society's most vulnerable, can we hope to turn awareness into lasting action. If climate change is a loud crisis, constantly amplified by the media, then the loss of biodiversity is a silent one, unfolding slowly, almost invisibly for most of us. In global surveys of public concern, it rarely makes the top of the list. It is usually ranked below far more immediate anxieties, such as inflation, unemployment, or healthcare. Yet for many scientists and environmentalists, this may well be the most dangerous threat to humanity's long-term survival. Why is there such a vast gap in perception? The answer lies in the nature of the problem itself. The decline of biodiversity is not like a storm or a heat wave. It does not strike suddenly. It creeps forward quietly. Each day, a few insect species vanish, A few hectares of rainforest are cleared, another coral reef bleaches and dies. These small losses, taken individually, seldom make headlines. We rarely notice the disappearance of a bird we never knew existed, or the decay of an ecosystem we've never seen. Our daily lives appear unaffected until, of course, it is too late. For experts who can see the whole picture, the warning signs are unmistakable and terrifying. The current rate of species extinction is hundreds, even thousands of times higher than the natural baseline. Ecosystems, from the Amazon rainforest to the deep oceans, are collapsing at unprecedented speeds, driven by industrial agriculture, pollution, and overexploitation. This is not merely about losing beautiful creatures. It is about the unraveling of the very systems that sustain life on Earth. Biodiversity gives us the air we breathe, the clean water we drink, the fertile soil we farm, and the natural balance that regulates climate. Its collapse threatens food security, destabilizes the climate, and erodes humanity's resilience to future shocks. Yet the way the issue is sometimes communicated has backfired. In their urgency to awaken the world, some environmental advocates have proposed extreme or moralistic solutions: drastic population control, sweeping dietary mandates, or radical lifestyle restrictions. However well intentioned, such proposals often alienate the very people whose cooperation is needed. They provoke resistance, skepticism, and even ridicule. Many come to view environmentalists as detached idealists trying to impose their values on others. This deepens polarization and makes it harder to build a shared sense of purpose. The biodiversity crisis exposes a profound challenge. How can we make people care and act for a problem that unfolds so quietly, so slowly, beyond the limits of their everyday experience? After traveling through the full landscape of global anxieties, one powerful message stands out. There is a deep disconnect between what elites label a crisis and what ordinary people actually experience in their lives. Policymakers, economists, and global leaders often focus on macro threats: financial stability, geopolitical competition, technological disruption. But for billions of everyday citizens, the real crises are far more immediate: fairness, stability, and trust. These public worries are not signs of ignorance or hysteria. They are valuable signals, reflections of lived reality. When people worry about the cost of living, it tells us that the economy no longer works for the majority and inequality has gone too far. When they worry about job security, it signals a labor market that has become too fragile, where workers need better protection. When they fear crime and instability, it points to the erosion of social cohesion and trust in public institutions. And when they express skepticism about climate policies, it reveals that they feel those policies are unfair, imposed from above, and lacking sincerity. Ignoring these signals is dangerous. When citizens feel unheard, when their daily struggles are dismissed as secondary, frustration turns to anger. That anger fuels populism, social division, and distrust in democracy itself. No society can remain stable if it is built on the quiet desperation of its own people. The lesson, then, is not to educate the public into caring about what experts deem important. It is for leaders to listen humbly, seriously, and with empathy. They must shift priorities from abstract distant agendas to tangible, human centered solutions, building affordable housing, strengthening public health care, ensuring stable jobs with fair wages, and easing the crushing burden of daily living costs. Only by addressing these immediate, everyday crises can we rebuild trust and create societies resilient enough to face the global challenges ahead. Because the next crisis, Dorling reminds us, will not come from the headlines. It will come from the hearts and minds of people who feel left behind. So, what can we do when faced with a world overflowing with anxiety, both real and imagined? The first and most crucial step is to change our perspective. Instead of viewing public worries as problems to be eradicated, we should see them as a compass, a guide pointing toward the cracks in our social contract, showing us where our systems are failing to serve people. After all, our journey through the world as collective fears has revealed a simple truth. Humanity's deepest concerns revolve around familiar themes: the desire for economic security, the need for stability, the longing to feel safe within one's community, and the hope for a fairer future for one's children. These are not unreasonable demands. They are the foundations of any civilized, livable society. The road ahead requires a fundamental reordering of priorities. Instead of obsessing over abstract indicators of macroeconomic growth, governments must focus on the tangible quality of life of their citizens. That means enacting bold policies to curb inequality and ensure that the rewards of progress are shared more fairly. It means treating public services, healthcare, education, and housing not as costs, but as investments in a nation's long-term well-being. And it means building social safety nets strong enough to protect people from life's inevitable shocks: unemployment, illness, and old age. For individuals, understanding the broader picture of global anxieties can be liberating. It reminds us that our personal worries are not signs of weakness, but reflections of shared social conditions. Recognizing this helps us reconnect, to see ourselves as part of something larger. Through community engagement, collective action, and holding leaders accountable, we rediscover our agency and the quiet power of solidarity. The world will never be free of crises, yet by focusing on what truly matters to people, by building societies that are fairer, steadier, and more compassionate, we can face whatever comes next with confidence and hope. The fears of today need not be a verdict on tomorrow. They can be the raw material from which we forge a better, wiser world. Our journey through the fears of the modern age has revealed a picture both sobering and deeply human. The world is not collapsing under a wave of grand catastrophes, as headlines so often suggest. Rather, humanity is grappling with ordinary, intimate struggles: fairness, stability, and trust. Concerns about the cost of living, employment, safety, healthcare, and housing are not cries of despair. They are declarations of what people truly value and expect from society. They are reminders that the purpose of progress is not endless growth, but shared dignity. The greatest lesson of all is the need to listen. Leaders, policymakers, and the media must narrow the distance between their agendas and the lived realities of citizens. By paying closer attention to what people actually worry about, we gain insight into what needs fixing and why. These anxieties are not signs of weakness, they are vital signals, guiding us toward renewal. If we heed them, we can build systems that respond faster, societies that act fairer, and communities that trust more deeply. That is not naive optimism. It is the quiet, practical hope on which a resilient world can be built. Reading the next crisis is like holding a mirror up to our collective fears. It doesn't shout or try to shock. Instead, it quietly dismantles the illusion that the world's greatest threats always come from the headlines. Danny Dorling reminds us that the crises shaping our lives are not just economic recessions or political upheavals. They are the quiet anxieties that live inside ordinary people. The fear of not making ends meet, the uncertainty of tomorrow's job, the worry for one's children, and the longing to feel safe, seen, and valued in a fast-changing world. What struck me most was how profoundly human this book is. Dorling approaches global data not as a statistician, but as a compassionate observer. He listens to people's fears, not to correct them, but to understand what they reveal about the societies we've built. In doing so, he exposes a sobering truth. Many of our institutions, while efficient on paper, have forgotten the human beings they were designed to serve. Growth, innovation, and progress have become ends in themselves, while fairness and empathy have quietly faded from the conversation. I found myself reflecting on how much of modern life is driven by noise, the noise of breaking news, endless warnings, and digital outrage. Yet, amid that chaos, the book offers something radical: calm attention. It suggests that our collective worries are not signs of weakness or hysteria, but signals, messages pointing us toward imbalance and neglect. If we listen carefully, they can become a roadmap for rebuilding trust, equity, and meaning in our shared future. By the final pages, I realized that The Next Crisis is not a pessimistic book at all. Beneath its sober analysis lies a quiet optimism, the belief that societies can change course when they truly hear their people. It left me with a sense of hope that perhaps the way forward is not through louder alarms or greater fear, but through empathy, attentiveness, and the courage to care about what really matters. The world may never run out of crises, but perhaps the next one isn't due something we'll read in the news. It has something we'll feel in our homes, our jobs, our sense of belonging, and maybe, just maybe, understanding those fears, rather than dismissing them, is the first step toward healing a divided world.